Hi there, Rissy here with another episode of Rissy's Room. And today is a special one because it's all about love. Who doesn't love love? I want you to put your fingers together like this and make a heart because we're going to spread love all around today. Oh yes, we are. Today is actually a very special day. It is not a holiday recognized by the government, but it's a very special day for people that look like me because exactly 53 years ago, the Supreme Court heard a case called Loving versus Virginia, and it made it legal for people of different races, people with different skin colors to get married. So that's one of the reasons why I am actually here. I'm able to read this book to you because of this law. So this book is called The Case for Loving. It is the fight for interracial marriage. It was written by Selena Alco and illustrated by her and her husband, Sean Qualls. So I'm excited to share this book with you. It's going to tell you about the whole history of the case. And this book was actually lent to me by Reverend Rebecca. She is the reverend at my church. I go to Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Rockville, and I'm so very proud of our reverend, and she's just like me too. You know who else she's just like? She's just like you, Marlene. Hi, Marlene. And she's just like you, Miles. Hi, Miles. And she's just like you, Maverick. She's just like you, Maverick, and just like me. Yes, we are all the product of two parents that came from different backgrounds and have different color skin. But because of this lovely book and because of this family that you're going to learn about in a few seconds, we are all here. Isn't that so amazing? I love our skin color. I love my hair. I don't know about you, but let's find out about this story. The Case for Loving, the fight for interracial marriage. First comes love, then comes marriage. Donald, Peggy, and Sydney had two parents who loved them and who loved each other. In fact, from almost the moment Richard Loving met Mildred Jeter, they wanted to get married and have a family. But for them, it wasn't that simple. And here's why. Richard was white, a fair-skinned boy who got quickly sunburned in July. Mildred was what they called colored in those days. Her skin a creamy caramel. In 1958, they lived in the small town of Central Point, Virginia, where people every shade from the color of chamomile tea to summer midnight made their homes. Richard Loving was a tall, quiet man of English and Irish heritage. The person he loved most was Mildred Jeter. Mildred was part African American and part American Indian, and she was thin as a rail. That's how she got the nickname String Bean. When Richard popped the question, String Bean jumped for joy. The two were in love. They felt it should be their right to get married. Sadly, it was not. Not in Virginia or 16 other states. In those places, marriage between people of different races was against the law. 100 years earlier, slavery divided America along color lines. Even after slavery ended, some white people weren't used to blacks being free, let alone free to marry whom they chose. If you married someone who had skin unlike your own, you could go to jail. Mildred and Richard wanted to get married, but they did not want to spend any time in prison. Although they couldn't have a legal marriage in Virginia, they could right next door in Washington, D.C. So they invited a few friends and family to witness their wedding across state lines. At the ceremony, nobody objected when Richard said, "I do," and Mildred said, "I do too." The Lovings were officially pronounced husband and wife. The blushing bride and her groom smiled all the way from D.C. back to their house in Virginia. They couldn't wait to start a family. But soon, something terrible happened. In the middle of the night, they were awoken from their sleep. It was the police. An officer shouted at Richard, "What are you doing with that woman?" Richard proudly pointed to their marriage certificate hanging on the wall. "That's not good here," the policeman boomed. And just like that, Mildred and Richard were taken away and locked up in jail. They were charged with unlawful cohabitation, which means living together against the law. The Lovings didn't think there was anything unlawful about their love at all. If anything, the way they were treated should have been unlawful. It was awful. Unlawful cohabitation. After a few nights behind bars, Richard and Mildred were told they had to leave Virginia if they wanted to live together as Mr. and Mrs. Loving. So, with heavy hearts, the pair hugged their families, packed their bags, and left their home. They tried to make a life for themselves in D.C. Richard found a job laying bricks, and String Bean gave birth to 3 babies, 3 different shades of milk chocolate brown: Donald, Peggy, and Sydney. But the city didn't suit the Lovings. There were too many cars. There was too much concrete. They missed Central Point with its rolling hills and open spaces. They missed their friends and families. They missed their home. They wanted to return to Virginia for good, so they hired lawyers to help fight for what was right. By now, it was 1966, and the times, they were a-changin'. Brand new ideas like equal rights for people of all colors were replacing old, fearful ways of thinking. The lawyers worked around the clock to make the case for interracial marriage as strong as possible. It was time to take the Loving case all the way to the Supreme Court. On June 12, 1967, when the case of Loving v. Virginia began, Richard and Mildred stayed at home with Donald, Peggy, and Sydney. They were all nervous and afraid they would not win. The state argued that in order to preserve the purity of the white race, blacks and whites must remain separate. Then it was the Lovings lawyers' turn to present their case. They said it was unconstitutional to make marriage a crime because of race. And they read a message from Richard himself. "Tell the court I love my wife, and it is just unfair that I can't live with her in Virginia." It didn't take long for a decision to be made. It was unanimous. The court ruled in favor of the Lovings. Interracial couples could now legally marry in Virginia. Richard and Mildred hugged. They won the right to their love. They were free at last. Over 9 years after their arrest, the Lovings packed their bags one final time. Richard planned to build a big, roomy brick house in Central Point. String Bean was ready to start their life over. The Loving family returned to Virginia to live happily and legally ever after. That's it. That's the reason why I'm here, and that's the reason why you're here too. Marlene, Miles, and Maverick, and Reverend Rebecca, we're all here because of this landmark case, Loving versus Virginia. I hope that on this day, we really take pride in the fact that all people, regardless of what color skin we have, should be able to love whoever, wherever, whenever they want. That is so important. so very important, especially during these times. We just need to love. We need more love in the world. So put your hearts back up in the air. Oh, wave them around. Spread that love. Spread that love everywhere. Yes, today is all about love, and it's all about the loving family who is helpful in making this happen. So I love you all. Mwah, 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 mwah. At the end of this, we're going to also show you a few resources that were in the back of this book, so you can take a look at other books that might help you and your family learn to love more. And I also am going to share a fun picture at the end, so take a little peek. Okay, have a very, very wonderful and loving weekend. Thank you.